Hi there, Sandra here, and thank you for joining me again, or indeed coming to see me if this is your first visit. My speciality is designing SVGs and using electronic cutters. I do occasionally do some other things as well. Also do some software tutorials in regards to cutting files and graphics software, so things like Procreate for the iPad and what have you. So today I am doing a design for a card, which is going to be one which is really handy. Now it's basically designed for Valentine's Day, but this one cut is going to give you the ability to make 3 different cards. It's quite versatile. You could also change the design up for a different theme, and obviously you can change colours and what have you. I've gone for this blue card because A, it stands up nicely when it's on video, and I just happen to have it to hand. So I've got it on my mat and I'm just going to brayer this on. You do want to make sure that your mat is nice and sticky for this. Normally when you cut things, you want to take the cut things off. In this particular case, we want to leave the cut things on the mat. Now you may be confused because this is not a branded mat. This is one that I've made up myself. I might do a video on that at another time. I use a Siser Juliet and I'm not stuck to branded mats, so I can use what I want basically. The other thing that might cause you some confusion is the fact that I have registration marks on here, but I'm not printing onto this. But there's a very good reason for that, and it will become obvious later on. So I have the first part of my design set up. I'm going to cut it out and I'll come back when that's done. I realised once I set it to the machine and it started cutting in the wrong place that I actually moved the design on my laptop, and yesterday when I was cutting it I put it in the centre and I did the same thing again, and I should have put the card lower down. So I've got it cut out and I'm just going to brayer that little bit because I do want the hearts to stay put, and I just want to lift this up. So now this is usable as a stencil if you wanted to. So that's one way of using this design. Going to brayer it down well. Now hopefully none of my parts have shifted. Having done that, but we shall see. And just to make sure this card doesn't move, because it's, if it's one of those mornings, this could well happen. I'm just going to put some masking tape on now to keep it in place. So I've now embossed those hearts and done the cut around them. Remove that, and hopefully you can see that's nicely embossed. You can put your registration marks on the mat like I did. There we go. And then you can do print and cut. Now the advantage of doing that is because you know all your lines are going to match up as long as your material doesn't move and your mat's not moving. Your lines are going to match up, and that really does make a big difference. It means that it's pretty much foolproof from that point of view because you're using registration marks, and as long as your design is lined up on your screen in your cut slot, it's going to be lined up here. And then of course you have all the hearts that you cut out. Now the little hearts, apart from the fact you could just stick them on a card, particularly if you've done them in red or pink or something like that, you could foil these if you want to. However, if you don't want to do that and you have something like Gemini or one of the other embossing machines, you can use these as loose embossing items. So basically you'd put a piece of card on, scatter these around, do your sandwich as normal, and you end up with a heart embossed piece of card. So they do have yet more uses. So this makes this a very versatile cut. Let's talk embossing tools. There is nothing particularly complicated about an embossing tool. Now I am lucky enough to have a 3D printer, and I actually designed this specifically for my Siser Juliet, and I've got an embossing tip put in here. Now what I use as an embossing tip is one of these pieces from a nail dotting tool. They come in different sizes, they're incredibly cheap, and you can get a pair of pliers and pull this out and then insert it into something like that. I've got one here that I have just cut down, and I have thickened the barrel with UV resin, and I then made a little ring around here as well, and that will work as an embossing tool. This one is another one that I've put into a 3D printed holder. And then this is an embossing tool, and I believe Siser are going to be selling these hopefully shortly. This is not a Siser one. And what you do with this is, in my case, I use a lollipop stick or an ice lolly stick, and I put that in between the material and this, and then I just tighten it up, and that does the job just fine, as you can see here. I said, I think Siser are going to be selling them, they just haven't got round to it yet. So there's lots of different things that you can use, and being able to emboss like this is quite good fun. However, if you want to do a large area of embossing, if you still have an old-fashioned machine like a SCAL6 or something like that for embossing, that you use your cutting machine to cut out shapes or stencils, whichever it is, because you can use it either way. And you could use this, for example, as an embossing plate if you wanted to. Fairly heavy card. The only thing with this is that with repeated use they will crush down and become less useful. However, if you make them from a heavier duty plastic, as I tend to, you can use them again and again, and it's not a problem. They don't crush down in the same way. So now that I've shown you the physical aspects of it, I'm going to show you how I deal with the file in Shortcut Slot. So this is the file that I was using for the design that I've just cut. If it has the registration marks on it for the page, and that's how I have it set up, then basically whatever I put here at any one time is going to be in the right place because I put those registration marks on my mat. Now, if you don't want to have to do that, you can of course just print out the item with the registration marks, put the paper on your mat and cut away the middle bit, place your design wherever you want to put it, and that will enable you to use the registration marks without cutting through an extra layer of paper, and you can stick this down properly, because if you put your basic cut design on top of the paper, it's not going to be stuck down unless you use yet more adhesive, so that's going to be problematic. So basically you print off your registration marks, put it down onto the mat, and then you can just cut across here, cut across here, put your design in the center of the mat, and then you'll be able to carry on as if those registration marks were on a specific mat. I've only put it on a specific mat because I can make my own mats. I can save that particular mat for doing those particular types of print and cuts, and it's just quicker and easier for me to do it than have to print off paper and remove paper from my mat and put more paper down on my mat, etc. So that's why I did it that way. So how do you cope with the actual design to get it to do the various different things? Now you should be able to see, but I will zoom in anyway. Let's get in a bit closer. Here we go. Then I have got my design in 3 distinct layers. I have the red layer, which are the original hearts that I cut out. I have my embossed design, which is simply an offset of a group of those hearts, and then I have a circle for my cut line. Now if I go to the layers panel over here, and if you want to have a closer look at your layers panel, you can just click on the button up there and it will put it on your workspace, and you can then drag it around. Now you can see I've got a group. If I turn all these off so you can't see anything, and I turn these, whoops, that's the lock button, I turn these on, you can see the hearts. And I have labelled them cut hearts, and the reason I've done that is because I've got 2 lots of hearts on here, and if I call both layers hearts, I wouldn't know which one was which, and it's easier. At a quick glance, I know that's my cut hearts. To change the name or to add a name to this, you double click on the group, and then you can fill it in as you wish. And if you want to lock it, you can lock it there as well. So that's how you change the name or add a name.
So I then have the circle and I have my embossing layer. Now, when you want to cut this, what you want to do is to go to Cutter, and you can set your line settings to whatever force, speed, whatever that you want to do in shortcut slot 6. That's, you just set it to what you want. You can choose to cut selection only. You can show originally the cut lines if you've got cut in here. If you change this to draw, I don't get anything there because that's cut selection only. If I switch that off, my drawing lines will come on because I've got a tool which is set to emboss. I've got the Pro version, and over here I get the option of preset tools and preset pressures and speeds and all the rest of it, and I can name them. Okay, but if you don't have the Pro version, you don't have that. You simply select whatever it is that you want to do. If you're embossing, I would suggest using a draw and a high pressure because it doesn't have an offset for a blade on a drawing setting. But if you're going to the cut lines, there's my cut line showing up. But what you must do when you cut this out is you must use the print and cut and make it read the registration marks. Because if it doesn't do that, you're going to cut it somewhere else. And that will defeat the whole purpose of having the registration marks in the first place. Then you just go through the various layers and you can select them as you want to cut them. You can hide your layers if you want to, simply by switching them off. And that makes sure you know exactly what it is that you're cutting, which is a good idea, especially if you're new to the software. Because it would be a pain if you cut the wrong set of hearts, for example. If you hadn't named these and you cut these as the hearts and then you're trying to use those to emboss, and it just isn't going to work. So that's how I did it. And if you want to practice this, it's a good skill to get under your belt. And it's very, very handy and it can create some really lovely effects. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Take care now.